Alex, founder of Cybersyn, I'm super excited to have you here. I've been using a lot of the datasets that Cybersyn shares on the Snowflake Marketplace, and I'm ready to see your demo and learn more about this and learn where all this is going.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. So tell me a little more about Cybersyn.
Yes. So Cybersyn, we're a data as a service company, a data provider built natively onto the Snowflake Marketplace. So our mission is to make the world's economic data transparent and available. And the way we do that is by collecting it from proprietary data sources, so first-party data owners, from public data sources, and from unstructured sources, cleaning it, shaping it, making it analytics ready, and then offering it on the Snowflake Marketplace.
Yes. So I've seen all kinds of data sets. You're telling me that there's a lot of focus on the economic data, but there are also public data sets that people can...
Exactly. So in general, especially on our proprietary data sets, we focus on where consumers are spending money and time, with the term consumer being very broadly defined. And in order to form those proprietary data sets, what we discovered and what we think a lot of customers who are using external data sets discover is that they need a huge amount of reference data to get started. Everything from US Census to Bureau of Labor Statistics to UN to World Bank. And so we sort of have this two-track strategy. On one hand, we publish a lot of data sets for free that are from the public domain. And then on the other hand, we build these proprietary data sets that are subscription products that we offer through the marketplace.
And as people become aware that there are all these data sets in the Snowflake Marketplace, some free, some paid, how are people adopting it? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. So, the last 10 years have been the sort of 10 years of building data science teams. Companies across various industries, including asset management, where I come from, have spent all this time building up data science teams and starting with internal data. And I think that we're getting to a point where our hypothesis is the next step, once you have your internal data in order, once you've centralized your internal data on the data cloud, the next step is, unless you're Google, you only have less than 1% of the world's data on your own customers. So the next step is to look outward and say, what data can I bring in to start sort of maximizing my data strategy effort? And that's where Cybersyn comes in. And so we've seen a lot of adoption across industries. I think one of the unique things of being a data provider is you end up serving multiple verticals at once. And generally speaking, these are teams that have analytics teams, have migrated most of their workloads to Snowflake, and are basically ready to start joining their internal data with external third-party data.
And someone becoming your customers.
Yes.
And what kind of data sets do they have access to?
Yeah, so in general, on the proprietary data side, we focus on consumer spending. So where consumers are spending money, where they're spending time. And when we say time, we're really talking about behavior, digital behavior. So a lot of our proprietary data sets focus on where consumers are, what they're buying, where they're shopping, and then also what they're doing online. So we're helping our customers basically understand where the economy is going. And those could be macro questions, like give me a real-time view of inflation, or give me a real-time view of consumer sales. Or it could be a micro view. What other services are my subscribers subscribing to? What is the churn rate of my competitors? What are my customers searching for on Google when they look up competitors or when they shop on Amazon, right?
What are my customers searching for? That's very specific information.
Yes.
And now you have so many data sets, and I know you have a demo prepared for us today.
Yes.
What is the demo about?
So the demo is about public domain data. Right? So we feel that before you start any external data strategy, it makes sense to start with what's publicly available for free that all of our taxpayers go towards collecting these data sets. And US government agencies in particular do an amazing job of publishing open data. The problem is it's all in different places. And so one of the things we've done at Cybersyn is centralize that and make it available for one click. And the demo shows how we've built a Streamlit application that allows you to search through the over 50 data sources Cybersyn offers for free on Snowflake and find the data set you need, find the table you need, then link to the Snowflake Marketplace, find the correct listing, mount the listing, and have access to it in your Snowflake environment.
Cool. So even a Streamlit app to make this the collection of data sets that you have searchable.
So we've actually found Streamlit to be very helpful in building visualizations very quickly to demo the data sets that we make available. And in sort of a meta way, we use Streamlit ourselves to do things like build search tools, build analytics tools for actually being a data provider ourselves.
So let's jump into the demo.
Let's do it. So we're here on app.cybersyn.com, which is kind of our central landing page that is itself a Streamlit app. Everything you're seeing here is built in Streamlit and is sort of powered by the Snowflake Data Cloud. And what you see here is we've basically sort of document all the sources that we publish data on. So today there's 58 unique sources. Those 58 unique sources cover 245 tables, right? And these are all sources from the US Census, the ACS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Like, name a public agency, and it's either published here or it's in our roadmap. And one of the things we realized was we needed to organize all of these tables and all these sources into listings. And we've done that into groups, right? So we've got thematic listings, one for financial data, one for real estate data, and so on. But sometimes you're looking for something very, very specific, right? So recently, the Federal Reserve has been in the news because of inflation, right? And this interface just allows you to search very quickly for that type of data. So I could type in Federal Reserve.
Ta-da.
And you see some of the data sets, including this time series data set that the Federal Reserve publishes. You also see a few other things. You see what entities are actually in each data set and what those entities mean. These entities are joinable across data sets. So if you mount this data set, you'll be able to join it with anything else that has that GeoID entity. And you also see which listings this data set is available in. So you could see here, this one's available in Government Essentials. And if I hit Government Essentials, this will take me directly into the Snowflake Marketplace page, where I see more information about what's actually in this listing. You'll see that you could access a full data dictionary of everything we've seen here, including these Federal Reserve tables we talked about. And you can, of course, mount this data into your sort of Snowflake account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here.
Get it for free.
Get it for free. And I can immediately jump into query data. And this allows me to start running some of the queries, and it comes pre-populated with some example queries we could generate. So for instance, unemployment rate. There you go. It comes pre-populated. So just as an example here, we've got unemployment rate by city and state. So you don't have to watch me write live SQL. I can just go ahead and run that, and that will generate the results.
In New York, we are looking for the unemployment rate since 2015.
Since 2015. And so you can see there we have it. So we could sort of plot that, and maybe here we add this as a series. Whoops.
There's a huge jump.
There's a huge jump, which is the pandemic. And then we see it come sort of back down.
Back to normal.
Right? And now if you recall, so there's a few more example queries that sort of give you a demo of each data set that's included in this listing. And you could see effectively every table or every view that comes, right? But you'll remember we had mounted this searching for Federal Reserve data. And so we can, of course, find that. And you'll see it'll autocomplete. And you see that data is here. And as promised, there's the GeoID field, which again could be linked to the GeoID field in any other table, including the table we just talked about, which is the unemployment table.
Excellent. And this is how easy it is to find data, and this is live data. This is getting updated.
Exactly, this is live. So this, you don't have to change anything. This just updates in place, so you've got the latest published data sets.
I love it. It's quick, it's easy. There's an enormous catalog of data you can access. Yes, here you're showing me how...
The strategy.
How this fits on the overall Cybersyn's vision.
Exactly. And so first of all, as you know, because you're Chilean, so Cybersyn is named after a historic economic project, which was centered around collecting the world's economic data. And if you recall, I mentioned Cybersyn's mission is to make the world's economic data real-time and transparent. And so in order to do that, we have to tie together various sources of data. One type of source is the public domain data we just talked about. And this, as I mentioned, we sort of give away for free, we document, and so on. The second source is proprietary data. So this is data we source from first-party data owners. And those first-party data owners often have something very valuable, but perhaps not valuable on its own, or perhaps not clean enough or analytics ready. And so Cybersyn partners with those first-party data owners. We buy their data, we bring it together, we merge it, we clean it, and we make it available in kind of a consolidated format on the Snowflake Marketplace. And this is some of the real-time consumer spending, real-time consumer digital behavior that I mentioned earlier. And then the final thing, which kind of fits between the two, is taking unstructured data and making it structured and making it usable. And LLMs and AI has enabled us to do so. And so we've been early users of Snowflake Cortex in PRPR to start building some of these data sets. And we hope to launch our first one in February.
Oh, this is really interesting, how you get to use different Snowflake features.
Exactly.
Yes, just looking at this diagram, on one hand you have the public domain data, bread and butter. Then you get proprietary data too. And how we're going to transform unstructured data is leveraging Snowflake Cortex.
Exactly.
And you're using Snowflake itself. You are using Streamlit independently, but also within Snowflake.
Exactly. So we use, so all of our data, all of our architecture is built on Snowflake maximally. And then we use Streamlit as kind of a tool to demo some of our data sets. And those Streamlits can be distributed either as when they have to be distributed to the open internet, as we saw in the data catalog example, that's just a hosted box, and you can sort of access that, and that's an independent Streamlit running on the web. Eventually, we hope to bring that into Snowflake Container Services. The other form of Streamlit that we offer is in the context of a native application. And native applications are cool because just as we can distribute data sets as native or as marketplace objects, as listings, we can distribute native applications as listings. And so therefore we can distribute Streamlits and we can distribute UDFs.
UDF?
Yes, so user-defined functions. So as I mentioned to you, many of our data sources have data that is not well structured or not clean or needs to be cleaned up. And so we spend a lot of time writing functions in Snowflake, in Snowpark, to make that data usable, right? And so what we've realized is a lot of those functions could actually be useful to our customers to clean up their own data or to make their own data joinable to our data. And these UDFs we share in the form of native applications. So right now we've launched one such native application focused on URL and web domain parsing. So for anyone who's ever worked with clickstream or web traffic data, you know that some web domains have an HTTP, some have HTTPS, some include the www, some don't. There's a .com, there's a .ca, there's subdomains. How do you make sense of all this and standardize it in a way that you can join two data sets that come from a different source when they're talking about semantically the same thing? And so our first kind of native application does this.
Oh, I really want to play with that. Now, getting a little away from the demo and going to history, yes, I know that Cybersyn was this company project in Chile from the 60s about collecting all this data. That was pretty early to do it in the 60s. Yeah. But now let's jump into 2022. You're in the investing world, and what happened? What led to Cybersyn?
Yes. So my story, I was in the investing world for a number of years. I spent 7 years, or almost 7 years, at a hedge fund called Co2. And we were large users of data to help make investment decisions. So we were buying clickstream data, credit card data, point of sale data, what have you, and kind of analyzing it and using that to make both macro and micro decisions. And so we were early adopters of Snowflake, and we became relatively large customers of Snowflake relatively early on. This is 5+ years ago. And that in turn led us to being some of the early users of Snowflake sharing, and then that eventually became Snowflake Marketplace. So my interest and relationship with Snowflake started there. As a firm, we became investors in Snowflake before the IPO. And so that gave me a chance to get to know some of the Snowflake team and sort of build a relationship with Snowflake that went beyond just being a customer. And then fast forward to 2022, I was sort of leaving Co2 and deciding what to do next, struck up a conversation with some of the folks at Snowflake, including Mike and Frank and Christian, and sort of the conception of Cybersyn came about. And the idea was, if Snowflake is Netflix, then who's going to build the original content for Netflix? And that's the premise of Cybersyn. And so we raised money in August of 2022, primarily from Snowflake, but also from Co2 and Sequoia, and started a company. And this is what Cybersyn is today.
I love it. So first you started as a Snowflake user, also your company became a Snowflake investor, and then now you have your own company, and Snowflake is investing in Cybersyn.
Exactly.
and we are building together. We have common users, common customers.
Exactly. And I think what's so interesting is, Snowflake, strategically, there's a symbiosis between Snowflake and Cybersyn. And what I mean by that is that, customers who have adopted Snowflake have invested in centralizing their data on the cloud. And so those customers are the best customers to start thinking about an external data strategy because they've pulled together everything they have internally. And so now the next step is, okay, what can we bring in externally? And conveniently, they're on the cloud, they're on the data cloud. So it's easy for them to access Marketplace and thereby these external data sets that Cybersyn provides. So in some sense, Snowflake's best customers are also the best potential customers for Cybersyn.
Yes. And what do you think makes Snowflake different that enable this whole story?
A few things. I think it's a long story, but I think that the first, the first and early, history of Snowflake is just the basic innovation of putting the data warehouse in the cloud. And I think that first of all, that allows organizations to get rid of data silos and to centralize all of their data in one place. Now they can still have governance, they can still have access control and so on, but it centralizes all the data, so it's kind of in one place. And I think that was the early innovation. What that, I think, allowed is because of that cloud model, it suddenly allowed organizational sharing, where we're all in the same cloud, so suddenly I can permission you, even if you're in a different organization, to access my table. And naturally, that leads to this wonderful marketplace and network effect that allows companies like Cybersyn to exist. So I think that was sort of a, perhaps planned, perhaps unplanned, but I think it became a huge network benefit that we're just beginning to see the rewards of today. And then I think more on the bleeding edge and sort of closer to today's story, I think there's applications in AI. And so since everybody has their data centralized in Snowflake, the data gravity is sort of there. And so it makes sense to add applications on top of that data where that data already lives. And it makes sense to start using AI and LLMs where that data already lives. And I think that story has played out and is playing out very well for Snowflake.
That's a beautiful story. Now, as more and more people discover these data sets, they start using them, what have you learned from your users?
First of all, one thing that's been very surprising is as a data provider, the breadth of use cases, right? We've got people using our data for lead gen, and we've got people using our data for investment decisions, and people using our data set for like LLM demos and sort of just more as like startups building LLMs on top of it or LLM training. So I think the number one thing we've learned is that there are some data sets that have such broad appeal that as a provider, you have to be able to serve very different verticals that often speak very different languages, right? So I think that's been sort of the number one lesson. I think the second lesson that's been sort of very interesting has been the importance of good data documentation, where part of the challenge, frankly, like of many of these public domain data sets is that they're hard to understand. You have to read through PDFs of documents that are published in a disparate way. And so Cybersyn can add a lot of value by bringing those data sets together and making them joinable, but then also by consolidating that documentation together in an intelligible way. And ideally, it's not just about consolidating that documentation, but about somehow making the data self-documenting, right? That's really the holy grail, is how can you standardize, so once you've used one Cybersyn data set, using a second Cybersyn data set kind of rhymes with the first one.
Nice. And I like how you mentioned so many different kind of business use cases, but then a lot of developers can relate to, I want to build an LLM demo.
Yes.
What kind of LLM demos could I build right now?
Right. So yeah, this has actually been a popular use case for us. And I'll say, two things about these LLM demos. First and foremost, part of the challenge of building an LLM app is just getting the right data in the right place. A lot of these RAG style applications require, the right data sets to look up. And so we've brought everything from patents to SEC filings to government contracts. So all types of kind of domain specific text heavy data sets to market kind of in one place, available for free. And so I think that this has enabled developers to just not have to worry about using APIs or sort of figuring out the logic to pull down all of this data. Instead, it's just kind of all there in Snowflake. And so you could start building your application right away. So I think there's this ease of getting started that's very appealing. And then I think in the long run, a lot of the proprietary data sets we're bringing to market, I think will be critical because we've seen there's a lot of providers of APIs or open source models and so on. But what's really unique is the data, right? And the sort of proprietary data that you bring. And some of that will be internal. Some of that will be you as an organization will have unique data sources nobody else has, and that could be an advantage. I think those sources will be combining that proprietary data with external data. That's where Cybersyn comes in.
Nice. And as people are watching this and they want to start playing, what should they do next? What's the next step?
They should go on the Snowflake Marketplace. They should type in Cybersyn, and then they should start demoing some of our data sets.
Thank you, Alex, for coming today. This data is so exciting. I'm so grateful that you're sharing it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I hope our viewers are having a lot of fun with it too. If you haven't found Cybersyn yet, go and search it on the marketplace, go to their website, and also for more developer content, come to developers.snowflake.com. I'm Felipe Hoffa, and if you want to watch more cool content, remember to like and subscribe.